in 2014, we were bummed out that we couldn't participate in a bill like this. So what we did is we started networking with states that have been participating in it. We put a lot of windshield time in, we're doing a lot of traveling, and just going different places and seeing what's been working in states that have been up and running and what's not been working. So we don't want to, I guess the knowledge we've gained is good to where you're not going to make the same mistake as what they've made. We're going to learn from other states that have been actively growing hemp now. Hemp is a latitude-adjusted plant, so it has to do a lot with the photo period. So a lot of the genetics that you'll hear from Canada and different parts throughout the country might not do as good here. So that's something to remember. It's like a herd of cattle. You can move cattle from east to west, but if you move a herd from north to south, you run into issues. So just remember that. What I'm going to go ahead and do is, what time is it now? We are at 12:17. I just have a quick clip I want to show you guys. And a quick video from Joseph Kelly, who's in Kentucky, who started in the hemp industry, which is very educational here. Okay, hemp is cannabis, the same plant. It's just another side of the plant. Similar to an apple tree, a pear tree, cauliflower, broccoli. It's from the same cannabis plant. Now, hemp does not contain THC, or very little bit. THC is the stuff that gives you the buzz that gets you high. It's the psychoactive element of it. Now, the hemp plant contains CBD. Right now, for our federal guidelines, hemp must contain 0.3% THC or less to be legal for processing, harvesting, and shipping. I want you to remember this 0.3. This is a very important number because there have been instances where farmers are sourcing genetics that they've heard are going to keep under that 0.3 and found out that they've gone over. If you ever hear the word that your field's running hot, that's the last thing you want to hear. Running hot is the term for where you're over that 0.3 and you have to destroy your crop. So seed sourcing is going to be a very important thing in the beginning, making sure the genetics that you find starting out are going to be under that 0.3. Our company has been working with seed companies and other seed companies throughout the country and have a pretty good idea of a handful that are legitimately under that 0.340 now. CBD, if you plan on growing CBD, seeds can get expensive. I mean, for true good genetics under that 0.3, you're looking at about $1 a seed. And for an acre of CBD, you're looking anywhere from 1,000 to 1,600 plants, maybe up to 2,000 if you want to squeeze them in there. But so you have an investment out front that you want to make sure you keep that 0.3 or under. It's very important. So you'll hear more about the 0.3 throughout the presentation, just something to keep in mind. So I want to just show you a quick video of a gentleman that started back in 2014 in Kentucky. He got involved with the Kentucky pilot program and kind of has a little information on what he thinks hemp does for him and where it's going. So after this presentation, we're going to roll with Colin Fury and Alex. They're going to give you some more on applications and uses and the history of cannabis also in our region.
All right, I'm Joseph Kelly. We're here in Murray, Kentucky. This is one of the last fields planted, about a 33-acre farm here. I got into hemp before the farm bill passed. I was in Frankfurt and met with the then Commissioner Conworth. I met with him and he just filled us in on, he was trying to get the state to pass their laws and regulations on the hemp, and so that piqued my interest. I started researching the crop, learning more about it. I just decided, next year I want to grow whenever I'm able to, and so that's how I got into it. And then every year I just expanded on that. I learned more. I know what I want to do the next year. And this year we've Joe, this is a whole lot more successful than anything I've done in the past. Hemp offers so much more than any other crop on the market. In one plant, 5 different uses financially. So with tobacco, I'm only harvesting the leaves. I leave the stalk. There's no flower material that I want. I don't want anything like that. I just want the leaves. Whereas here, I want to take the leaves off. I want to take the grain here that's in these, and then I want the fiber that you can see here. So another fiber. Then I have the herd, which is in the middle. That's another product. And then you've got the roots right here. So if you can harvest a plant that has 5 different uses, and there is absolutely nothing left in the field, it's got way more advantages than corn. Corn, you're only harvesting the grain, tobacco, and the leaves. Soybean, you're only harvesting the seeds. So 5 products in one plant gives you a whole better return on your investment. I think the sky's the limit in the future. I think, right now, we're almost 1,000 acres. In the future, it could be 5,000, 10,000 acres. I wouldn't be growing this much if I didn't think there was a market for it. So I think there's a large market for people wanting hemp products. Sunstream and Victory Hemp Foods, their products flying off the shelf. They can't get enough in there. Plus CBD oil, it's a huge market for it. There's a huge demand. So now we've got to take what we've learned about growing the crop, put that into a good product, harvest it and get it in the right hands and get it sold. But I think we just, every year we sit back and evaluate the market, what's going on, who's buying the product, and instead of trying to force a product on somebody, we see what they want, and then I grow accordingly.
Okay. Kelly down in Kentucky, kind of giving you a little background. On what he's been doing. Now, I mentioned a little bit about CBD in the beginning. Now, in the Midwest, our infrastructure is just beginning. So the CBD is kind of a craze right now. But I want you all to know, once we start to build our infrastructure, processing facilities, the grain and fiber side of this plant is going to be a good thing for the long run. I mean, once we start to have different industries coming in, putting orders in for automobile parts from the herd of the plant, from the textile side, it's going to get to a lot of acres, right? Right now, the CBD is the craze, it's exciting, it's a lot of work. It's agricultural is the grain and fiber side. Horticultural is more of the CBD growth. I mean, it's more of a vegetable growing thing. You're going to be on your knees taking care of individual plants, always walking your field. So it's going to be something, a lot of manual work's involved in that. So I just want you to know, if you do get into that, it's going to be something, it's a lot of work. It's expensive, and if you don't get the genetics right, it can be costly. So we're going to go ahead and start with Alex on some applications here. I'll get his slideshow up and going. I'm curious, you actually going to start off.
Yeah, and Alex, you get up here as well. And folks, I'm not quite sure how, well, it's probably pretty simple, but I'm not quite sure if I know how to operate this clicker. So luckily I've got some beginning slides. You got the clicker, Brian. And anyway, I don't know if any of y'all know Alex Seifert. He's from the Wilbur, Clatonia area here, and I don't mean to embarrass him, but he was the Creek Homecoming King some years ago.
Yeah.
King or queen?
Oh, and then also, before I get started, could you raise your hand if you're from Kansas today? Okay, we got a couple people. We've got a couple slides on Kansas and what they are doing and have going now, and we'll be sure to go through that. All right, are we ready to roll? Okay. I don't know if any of you here have a nickel, but on the back of the nickel, you're going to see Monticello. It's one of the best known estates in the United States. And this is an estate that was built through hemp production. It was Thomas Jefferson's home. If you heard the commercial on the radio or the paper, you saw George Washington. You know, he grew hemp as well. We didn't mention Thomas Jefferson because he also smuggled in some seeds with maybe a little bit of a higher THC rate from Turkey and China. But anyway, hemp began before the United States was ever founded in North America. And, you know, personally, I love freedom, and it kind of had totalitarian beginnings because it was ordered to be grown in Jamestown Colony in 1619, and it was ordered to be grown in the Massachusetts and Connecticut in 1631 and 1632, just because of all the variety of uses. Britain offered citizenship to non-citizens in the Americas who would grow hemp, and hemp was legal tender until the early 1800s. Benjamin Franklin, he operated a mill that made hemp paper, and about 90% of all the ship sales at that point in time were made out of hemp. Now, after Reconstruction, the abolition of slavery, hemp became more expensive to produce, but you'll hear from the Bish brothers later, as the Industrial Revolution took place and inventors created the decorticator and other attachments that would make hemp farming less costly. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he had a bunch of campaign contributors, mainly William Randolph Hearst, who owned 75% of the newspapers and the majority of the paper mills in the country. And they taxed it and threw it in with the marijuana plant, even though hemp only has 0.3 at most of a percent THC, and you'd have to smoke a joint probably the size of a cigarette or the size of a telephone pole to get high, but you probably just end up with a headache. Alex, if you want to start with applications.
Can you guys hear me without a microphone? Good in the back?
I can use the microphone too.
So as Joseph on the video said earlier, there are multiple parts of this plant that you can use when you take it from the ground. So I'd just like to talk about some of those and some of the uses that you can get from that. Currently they say there's about tens of thousands of different products that can be made, but there are 5 main parts of the plant that you can use. Go ahead. You want to give me the clicker, or are you going to?
Oh yeah, sorry about that. I got to pay attention.
All right, so first I'm going to start with the seeds. The seeds that we have over there, that's the hemp parts. Those can be used in multiple ways. It can be dried out, ground into flours. You might see it a lot of protein shakes. Or the seeds can be pressed for their oil. This oil can be used for food as well, or it can be used to put in your vehicles too. So, next.
Well, the benefits of eating hemp. Researchers at the University of Pittsburgh have found that, Alex, you keep this, I can talk loud enough. They have found that eating the hemp seed helps with inflammation, and it also is essential for your arteries. It'll help lower your blood pressure. It's known to be good at skin repair if you have acne, eczema. Eating hemp seed will help reduce your breakouts. The arginine in the hemp seeds is essential for healthy veins and arteries and lowers blood pressure. And at Konkuk University in South Korea, not the North, they don't do research up there, they found that it relieves the symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis if you eat hemp seeds.
Next we have the hemp fiber. So this comes off the outside of the stalk of the plant. These fibers are what you see in textiles. I wear hemp socks every day. They're made out of the fiber. The fiber is very nice. It's antimicrobial, antifungal. So I'd take my boot off right now and stick my nose in it, and I've done it before. So this fiber can also be used as, in history you hear of roads, the sails, everything like that. So it's one of the strongest natural fibers known to man, and current auto manufacturers are using these to press plastics to make their door panels. Audi, BMW, Mercedes all have production plastics right now that they're using in their vehicles. So as you see in the picture there, that was a Lotus Elise made out of hemp fiberglass. So the entire body of the car was created from hemp plant, where they just used the fiber and hurd instead of synthetic fiber. Then inside the stem, underneath the fibers, is the hurd or the shib. For a long time, this was kind of just used as a byproduct. People would use it as animal bedding and stuff like that, and it wicks away moisture really well. But here recently, kind of into the New Millennium 2000 period, there came this resurgence of hempcrete. In history, they've kind of used it in different ways. It's kind of a, I don't know if you've heard of an earth home or an adobe style home. But you take this hemp hurd, it's just a little wood chip. You can mix it with lime and create walls with it. These walls, they're building homes that don't need HVAC systems. It purifies the air, it's fire resistant. If you do just a little bit of searching on the internet, you'll find I saw a video of a propane torch they put on one of these little blocks and ran it out of fuel, and it never caught fire. It just had a little black mark on it. So you can take this, mix it together, build your walls. You can finish it with magnum board that will allow it to breathe, because it needs to be able to breathe to keep that moisture nice and level for you. Or you can finish it raw, like you can see here, where it has a nice textured look to it. Then it can be framed in just like any other house. The nice thing about this is it can reduce the use of lumber 30 to 40%, and it's monolithic. So you put the frame up and you fill it in right up to the ceiling. You can even make the roofs in it if you want. What do we got next?
Yeah, you
go
some of that.
Go ahead. So I talked about the seeds. Colin here in a little bit is going to talk about the flower of the plant. So there's two. You've got the fiber, the hurd, but the roots themselves can still be used. You can extract them from the ground and use them for medicines. It has the same properties, anti-inflammation and stuff like that. Or you can keep them in the ground, and they're going to help you with your rotational crops. The nice thing about the roots of hemp is they grow deep, and come fall, they're going to decay from the inside out, allowing that ground to kind of aerate itself without having to do any tilling or anything like that. It's going to do that work for you. It also absorbs heavy metals, it absorbs radiation, and it helps purify the soil itself. So even if you leave it in the ground, like I said, you're going to have a lot of benefits just from planting hemp as opposed to your other crops every year. So it's been proven to be a good rotational crop.
Scientists from Belarus, and they even hired a private company from Ireland, they used hemp to clean up a lot of the Chernobyl disaster remnants in Belarus. Some of the additional benefits of the hemp roots, does anybody here, and I don't mean to get too personal with you, but have a pregnant wife? Okay, well, if you happen to have one and she has a difficult childbirth, well, Dr. Ethan Russo of Montana University recommends get her some juices from the hemp root. And then research done at the University of Malaya shows that hemp roots inhibit colon cancer, and the Akita Institute of Japan has done studies and research that shows that it can kill melanoma and other skin cancer cells. sorry for that. We're going to move on to CBD. It's expected to be a $22 billion industry by 2022. Even Martha Stewart's getting into the business. Yeah, 22 billion. Thank you for correcting me, not million. There's, as Brian talked about earlier, two kinds of methods of CBD production. There's agronomic method, which is what we all use for your corn and your soy planted in the fields. Your CBD yields won't be as high, but it's cheaper to plant. And what I mean by CBD yields is the plant itself is made up of a number of cannabinoids, and you want a higher percentage of the CBD cannabinoid. Through the horticulture production, which is greenhouse production, you get higher CBD yields, but there's more effort up front. Some of the benefits of CBD, there's a number of ailments that it helps. Doctors at Nottingham and Oxford University have done research that shows that a single dose alone can reduce your blood pressure. There's been a number of studies, there's a number of ailments, as you can see, that it's beneficial for, but a number of studies that have shown that it's really beneficial for folks with treatment-resistant seizure disorders. In this study at Stanford University, 13 of the 19 folks who went through saw seizure reductions of over 75%. In this study at the University of Denver, Colorado School of Medicine, completed by Dr. Edward Ma, the majority of folks saw seizure reductions, and 45% never experienced a seizure after they started the CBD oil. This is a larger study that was done at Seattle Children's Hospital in conjunction with the University of Washington. And in this study, there were 272 participants. 26 folks were seizure-free, and many saw their seizures reduced, the overwhelming majority. So it isn't, it doesn't help everybody with seizures, but CBD is a crop that helps some folks with epilepsy. In 2013, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell passed Hemp into the 2014 Farm Bill. It was signed into law by President Barack Obama, and I'm going to introduce you all to a man you may know from Portland, Nebraska. He's a fourth-generation farmer. Please give a hand for Senator Norm Wallman, otherwise known as Stormin' Norm Wallman. He's going to say a few words. He was, when that farm bill was signed, he was the gentleman who led the charge to get the laws changed. You want to say a few words, Norm? Well, thank you, Norm, for coming, and thank you for getting this all started. Here's the text of the 2014 Farm Bill. Then we have the 2018 Farm Bill that was just signed by President Trump, and Section 10113 gives farmers access to crop insurance. This grants hemp farmers also access to research under the Critical Agricultural Materials Act. This is because the Farm Bill descheduled hemp. In 1961, our United Nations Ambassador, Adlai Stevenson, signed on to this Convention on Narcotic Drugs, which made hemp a Schedule I narcotic, meaning it has no medical benefit and is not allowed to be researched in the United States. That's why a lot of the studies that we've been citing until recently have been from outside. But now that research can take place, and farmers will be able to transport hemp, grow hemp, as their state allows, but the federal prohibition is over. The state will be working with the federal USDA, though, once regulations come out. And if I'm mistaken on anything, I'm going to have Camden Caban come up. But first I'm going to go through a little bit about the Kansas bill shortly. Kansas has legalized hemp production. You have until May 31st to send in your application in person, until June 1st if you want to have mail it. The fees are higher than have been in a lot of other states like Kentucky and Colorado. You can see, to be a grower in Kansas, you got to pay a $1,000 license fee on top of your application fee, and the fees are even more extravagant. But Kansas has got the ball rolling, and we're hoping that they're going to lower the fees in the upcoming sessions after the USDA comes up with further regulations. Kansas also only has certain varieties of hemp that they're allowing to be grown. Now, we're in Nebraska mostly zoned 5A, 5B, where Kansas is down in the 4s, maybe even down in 3s. So, like Brian said, you're not going to have a lot of the same hemp varieties, but some of them may be applicable. One variety, in fact, was named after the president who signed the law. And then the hemp reporting regulations, I hate this, but you're going to have to report to the Department of Agriculture and Hemp, or Department of Agriculture in Kansas, excuse me, about your hemp production if you choose to produce there. Now I'm going to turn it over to Camden Caban. He's the legislative assistant for Senator Tom Brandt of Plymouth, Nebraska. Senator Justin Wayne of Omaha was the individual who introduced this year's hemp bill, but Tom Brandt's the one who's prioritized it and got the ball rolling, so thank you for joining us, Camden. And Camden, we're not going to have questions now, but later on in the program, after some of our speakers, we'll have a little bit of a question and answer session, so Camden can kind of give you the feel of where the legislature is and how this market might progress in Nebraska. But anyways, thank you, Camden.
All right, thank you. So 657 yesterday passed slug file on a voice vote of a lot to 0. It's been a pretty smooth sail for the most part outside of Senator John Lowe has some issues with it, but he's kind of on his own right now. We do have a emergency clause on there, so it'll go straight to the governor upon the final reading here next week. So he'll either has 5 days to sign it or not sign it. He should. Hopefully he does. And we don't have to override a veto or anything weird like that. But yeah, I was just going to answer some questions, but I guess we'll do that later. So.
Oh, you have time.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You said he's gonna potentially sign next week?
Yes, because the emergency clause on it, so it's going to go straight to him so we can plan it this year because we're running out of time.
I was just gonna ask how soon would it take to get permits and such?
You have till December 31st, so I mean, you can apply and do all that as long as you don't have any kind of criminal background. You should be good to go. But I think you want to plan Nebraska no later than like May 20, give or take.
Well, there's a second season if you want to catch
like
a
a short season.
yeah.
Right.
There's a second season you catch late July or what have you, early August, but yeah.
So, any other? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I see there were some amendments in 657 yesterday. Did that just pull 457 into it?
A portion of 457. The Department of Ag, or the Attorney General's office wanted some clarification on some stuff, and then we took a portion of 457, which that is Senator Lathrop's bill that decriminalizes the CBD portion, so it takes essentially CBD out of a controlled substance because you cannot get high off hemp CBD, you just can't. And so we pulled that in there, so we should be good to go for CBD, and that's why we did do that. Yes, sir.
Okay, so why would Ricketts even sign it?
Why would he?
Yeah, because he's down on marijuana and hemp, so why would he sign it all of a sudden?
Because this isn't marijuana, and hopefully we've made that argument clear enough to where he understands that. We've been working with his office. He's been in support. He's on the record of supporting industrial hemp.
So he's changing his tune then?
I can't answer that.
Can't he just say no then?
So usually a governor can either sign a bill or just let it go without signing it, let it on the wall, go into law, but he has put himself into a corner where he said he's going to sign every bill, he's going to veto every bill that comes before him. So hopefully he signs it and we don't have to mess around with it. And that's what he's indicated in the past, so that's where I'm going to be on, I guess.
So as soon as he signs, it'll be in the law.
Correct.
And that could be his next week.
Yep. I mean, we're looking at the end of next week, maybe early week after. We should be good to go. Yes, sir.
There are some provisions in the set up for participation in the pilot research program this year. Do you know whether the Department of Agriculture is ready to get licensing forms out? And I understand there's a random selection process. Do you have any information on how many licenses will be issued this year?
They are estimating 50 licenses. They initially wanted us to put a cap on it. We said no, because that's not very free market for us to do. So we said no cap, and we give it up to them to accept or deny who they want. They're estimating 50. They have not indicated that they will limit it in any way. I hope they have been proactive and urged them to be proactive, like, you know, this is going to pass. We're telling you it's going to pass. Please get your forms ready. Please get everything in order. I can't answer to whether they've done that or not. They've had a hard time with the flood stuff recently, so they've been pretty backed up. So hopefully they're ready to go. It should be easy enough. I mean, we're a huge ag state, and our Department of Ag should be able to handle, you know, 100 people pretty easily.
Well, I keep on, I got one, and I got Jeff with Hemp International from Manitoba, who's gonna Skype in here and have a presentation, so.
Any other
Does
questions?
the question, hand up there? Yeah.
Mr.
When do you think the Department of Agriculture will have the regulations?
The U.S. Department of Ag, they have indicated October to December of this year to have their rules and regs.
What about the Nebraska State Department of Agriculture?
We've given them their regulations, so they'll have it. They have it.
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Camden, and big round of applause on that no cap, so everyone in here can participate. And I'll hand it over to Brian.
All right, we're going up north of Manitoba with Jeff with Hemp Production Services and Hemp International. He has got quite the jump on us down here in the Midwest with the hemp production over the years. And he has a great presentation to kind of give you the basics on what they're doing up there and what you guys will eventually be getting down to in here, eventually with contract farming for certain companies that will provide genetics and buy their crop when it's done, completed. So we turn it over to Jeff, and here he is.
Thanks a lot, Brian. Can maybe just do a audio check there. Everyone can hear me okay? All right, and you can see my screen okay?
Yes, we can.
Wow, isn't that great when technology works? So super. Pleasure to join you guys through the internet. I'd rather be in person, but we're actually putting some seeds in the ground here today. Not hemp yet, but I also farm up here. So a little background, I guess, on myself and our companies. As you see on the screen, Hemp Genetics International is obviously our genetics company. We've got 6 cultivars or varieties that are registered or on the list of approved cultivars to be produced in Canada. And now at this point, primarily throughout the US, as we know, every state's individual with regards to some of the rules and regulations, but many of the states adopted the Canadian varieties, the list of Canadian varieties for their own state. So, like I say, so we've got six varieties there. Hemp Production Services is our sister company, and that's the picture there shows the 3 products that we focus on. So hemp, making hemp parts. Upper right-hand corner is hemp protein powder, and of course hemp oil. So a little bit of the challenge lately has been just the label of hemp oil. It's sort of getting thrown around a little bit between back and forth and getting confused with CBD oil or hemp oil. So as we know, CBD oil is derived from the plant parts. The picture of the hemp plant in the background there, the very green. You can see that most of the CBD would be found in that plant material in the leaves, the bract material surrounding the seed, where the product that we work with thus far in Canada has been the seed itself, so the grain. And And of course, we know that hemp is extremely nutritional, high in omega-3 and omega-6. So that's what we focus on. We are a bulk ingredient supplier of those three products. So if anybody's interested in white labeling. So the other bit of, I guess, sort of my sales pitch, we are currently just in the throes right now of getting our seed shipped into the U.S. Finally have all the export permits in place and got everything figured out with what the USDA needed to get the seed across the borders, which was I was hoping it would be a little bit easier this year, but of course that didn't quite happen. But we do have all that in order. I don't really put a big sales pitch in my presentation, but this is it. That if anybody is interested in growing grain, or hemp for grain or otherwise, then certainly give me a call sooner than later, and we can include you in an order for itself. So that's about as far as the high pressure sale goes for me, Brian. So just a little bit. I'm gonna move through a lot of these slides kind of quickly. I just want to really focus on establishment. I have a lot on in this presentation with regards to handling it at the end, but I think for the most part I'll try and focus a lot on the crop and establishment and how to get off to a good start growing hemp. My background again is I've grown, this will be my 21st crop here putting hemp in the ground. Primarily I was involved with small plot applied research up in Canada here, so I did a lot of the initial agronomy work, such as going on in the US right now, and that's part of my job here now is assisting the research institutes in the US who deal with us, just kind of trying to help them try and sort of get a research program put together from what I've learned in the past and kind of what's available. So anyway, this is kind of just a little bit of a slide just to give you an idea of how much food product Canadian ships into other countries. So 2016 was a very strong year for us as far as exports, and followed in 17. And really, you can see the continual growth. The reason that we saw a big dip here was a blip in the radar when South Korea came on board, looking for a whole bunch of needle hulled hemp seed and also some hemp oil and protein powder. Then a consumer group, and this is just kind of a warning, but a consumer group wrote a letter to the government stating that there were heavy metals found in hemp and that they should halt all imports into South Korea. And be banged if the government didn't believe them without any science-backed data, and immediately that kind of put an end to all of those imports into South Korea, which we were shipping about 5 containers a week into South Korea to meet the demand for hemp. So just wanted to put that out there that, you know, there still are a lot of these, I guess, people out there that are maybe concerned about hemp seed, which is completely not science-based, or I'm not sure exactly if there's trade disputes or other manners, but we are susceptible to those types of issues that are political in nature and that really just kind of tick a person off. But anyway, just wanted to put that out there so that we know that hemp is traded around the world now, and we're susceptible to those types of political problems. So we all kind of know that hemp is a cannabis plant. In Canada, it's clearly we've grown it for three distinct purposes. The fiber industry, I think that the U.S. is pretty well caught up to us because there's been a lot of happenings in the fiber industry in Canada thus far. We've got 2 or 3 processing plants here that we're putting together, slowly getting the process put together and the varieties, but really what's driven the economy or the hemp industry in Canada for 20 years now has been for grain production and also obviously for food. And the focus has turned, just as it has in the U.S., more to CBD. We only became legal to grow to play with the flowering parts in a hemp crop August of last year. So until then, we could take the grain off the field and we could take the stalks off the field. But any plant material, chaff coming out the back of the combine had to stay in the field. We were not allowed to try to utilize that or play with it in any way. So we feel, at least I feel myself, a little bit. I've got a very, I think I have a very solid background in how to grow hemp. But when it comes to production of CBD, we do have, I think, like a lot of people, there's a fairly steep learning curve for that. So producing quality hemp products, what do we do, and what is the market demanding, and how can you supply quality hemp? And in my opinion, just like everything in agriculture, systematic approach is required to maximize the quality. So proper planning, agronomics, and particularly for grain, and I would suggest that for CBD also, harvest and storage practices are extremely important. We're looking at some high value crops here and parts of the crop, and we have to make sure that we provide a good quality and safe product for consumers. I think that's one of the biggest issues that needs to be addressed. Again, I can give you examples of how to do it on the grain side of things, but if somebody is interested in growing it for fiber or for CBD, it may just be a different process, but the mindset has to remain the same, in my opinion. And it all starts with agronomy. So just as an example here, just kind of go through a bit of a flow chart on what we do to ensure that we are providing a high quality product. When a farmer grows hemp seed, starting on the left-hand side, that raw hemp seed, when we call for it to come in to get processed, we'll ask for a farmer sample, and we test it at that point in time. So right after the raw hemp seed, you should see a testing procedure in there. There we tip for microbiology to see if there's bacteria, yeast, molds, salmonella, E. coli, any of those nasty pathogens that can make people sick. We want to check to see how it is in the farmer's bin before we bring it in. If it's okay, or we feel confident that we can either sort of fix it up a little bit if need be, then we call it in and get it cleaned of all impurities. So again, our cleaning is fairly strict. We clean to 99.95% purity. Again, because there's little processing in the whole. There's little room in the process for a kill stock, I should say. We're trying to maintain and have the nutritional value remain in the hemp seed, so we don't use any high heat, cold press, oil press. There really isn't any chemicals or anything else that's added to it to kill those pathogens. So we have to make sure that we have a delivery of some good quality product. The seed is then crushed, and if you go up to the top, it gets filtered and then bottled into hemp seed oil and it's packed under nitrogen to maintain shelf life. And on the bottom side is what we call the byproduct, I guess, which is the press cake. It comes off the screw press. We'll mill that and grind it and then separate it with a sifting mechanism. And that's where we get our protein powder. So depending upon how fine we sift that, depends on how high we can get that protein powder. So our protein powders range from 23 to 50% depending upon what the consumer and the customer wants and how fine we do that. So that just gives you an idea. So there's a check here just after raw hemp seed where we do testing after it's cleaned once again because a lot of the bacteria may have been carried with either weed seeds or other parts of the plant. Chaff materials, so then we test it one more time. We test it in the quality control on the far right hand side there, and that's where we test it for THC. We want to make sure there isn't a lot of wheat in there too, so we are a gluten-free product, so testing for gluten, THC, all of the aspects before it's packaged and ready to go. So it is a fairly intensive testing procedure. These are the nasties that I was telling you that we're looking for. Peroxide value is essentially an evaluation where you can determine what the shelf life of an oil is. The higher the peroxide value, the more essentially the seed may have gone rancid. So if the seed was handled a little too rough, had a crack in the seed coat, it got some oxygen in there, oxidized, that would give hemp an off flavor. So that's what the peroxide value is. The rest of the stuff is basically more bacteria associated, so protopolyphores, etc. So if you take a look, these are two products, two bags I bought off the same day in a grocery shelf. The product on the left is our hemp, toasted hemp seed dehulled, and on the right hand side is a competition, I guess, that just came out with a new product. And I think an important thing here to remember is consistency. And so basically the processes that we have at Hemp Production Services, they've been in the business also. RD haulers, they've been doing it for 20 years. The product on the right is a company that started up and has about 2 months experience. And so you can kind of see the difference there. Obviously it's quite a visual difference. Perhaps on quality there may not be, but when somebody orders or somebody purchases a bag of hemp seed off the shelf, they really should have an expectation of looking at the same thing. So quality, as we know as farmers, is always very important, and we need to be cognizant of that. So just wanted to show a bit of that. So when we're looking at agronomy, we, field selection, crop rotation, variety selection, seeding, fertility, weed control, and of course harvests are the main components that we need to sort of take care of. So when we're picking a field that we want to grow hemp, regardless of what we're growing it for, again, we really need to pay attention to crop rotation history, and particularly on the conventional side, what is the herbicide history of that field? Hemp does not enjoy residual herbicides of any sorts. There are not a lot of herbicides that are registered in Canada currently. I think we have two altogether, and we're looking for another third one to come in the next coming year. But hemp is very sensitive to many herbicides. It makes a very good. It's a very good candidate for growing it in organic situations, in the fact that it grows very quickly and it can suppress weeds, but it certainly is a nutrient-hungry plant. So fertility is extremely important too. So there's those two things that I just mentioned are sort of a little bit of a bird in my saddle, I guess, as to what you can find on the internet, where you may read that hemp can be grown on just the poorest soils and it still does well or still survives. It doesn't need any fertility or any sort, and it'll actually kill weed in your field, which is, to be quite honest and blunt, is hogwash. At an early stage, is a little bit tardy to get going and get growing very quickly. So if there are weeds that are competing against the crop, they will be a problem throughout the year. So you do need to control weeds right up to seeding as best you can, as possible. To give hemp, it will, during what we call the elongation phase in July, when it really starts to grow, then that's when it turns into a bit more of a beast and it can control or suppress those weeds. But until then, kind of all bets are off. It's a head-to-head battle to see who gets to the sun and who gets there first. And if there's problem weeds in there, they will be problem weeds for the year. You're going to have hemp. There's no allelopathic effect that hemp is going to kill off those weeds. So looking at different seeding options, for the most part, we seed with air seeders and box drills as opposed to planters, but certainly able to seed with a planter. This is an example of, I believe it's probably a sorghum plate. And you can see the singulation there. You got plants every 2 to 3 inches. The seeding rate in the bottom right-hand corner, that's on 15-inch row spacing. So again, for weed management without any herbicides in your back pocket, if you can do some mechanical tilling in between the rows there, a wider row spacing is good. The concern I have about going in too wide is when you're harvesting for grain, we all know that hemp wants to sort of almost, if it has more space, it's going to resort to looking more like a Christmas tree as opposed to a palm tree. If we're harvesting for grain, we want a nice even crop canopy, as even as we can get with a non-uniform crop like hemp, but it just makes harvesting that much easier if we can. So we tend to have our seeding rates up in that 25 pounds per acre range, just to accommodate that. So just as a bit of a summary here, making sure that you know the crop rotation history of herbicide and fertility. Soil properties are fairly important too, and soil properties are really a reflection of the moisture that goes along with that. So moderate soil texture or clay loam soil seems to be most beneficial. Heavy clays, it's not to say that a heavy clay can't grow hemp on a heavy clay, except when you get some compaction or excessive moisture. And the heavy clay, of course, doesn't have the infiltration rate that a loam or a sandy soil has. And if hemp just does not like to have its feet wet, so that seems to be the major problem. Again, sandy soils will work also, but we definitely need some moisture for that crop to survive, so that's important. Non-saline, so in other words, some of your better fields should be picked to grow hemp, high value crop, and put it on your better fields. And excess water, this is what it's going to look like. So this is a breeder plot. The bars with wider row sticks, we can go in there and do some roving, but you can see it's a very small depression that's in the forefront of the picture on the left. But you can see in the picture on the right where there's some chlorosis of the plant. That's the growing point is in the middle. You get some yellowing, and eventually, if it maintains or if the plant can't get the oxygen to the roots, then it will perish. So that seems to be one of the most major concerns is excess water when trying to establish a hemp crop. Brian, if you could just give me sort of a 5-minute warning too when my time is getting close there. I'm trying to keep track of those.
Sure will.
So this is just a drone picture of a field that we happen to get shortly after, probably within 2 weeks, about a 2 to 3 inch rain event, and you can obviously see the jigsaw puzzle that happens. And when that happens, areas where hemp has perished, you're going to have all sorts of weeds and volunteer crop come in there, and that obviously has an effect on what your clean out is going to be and other things that occur. So again, making sure you try and pick a proper field is a lot more beneficial. Variety selection. So this is a fairly big one. Hemp research obviously is quite scarce. I'm working with a number of different research institutes providing our genetics, and it's something that I'm very interested in as an agronomist. If I'm asked to ask what variety would be suited to a certain region, it's difficult to sort of guess at it. You really need to sort of have that grown there so you can determine how well it does. And obviously, each variety is different, each location is different, so more and more this is going to become a little bit more of the norm. But I like to try to make sure that the more science, the better. Science-based script trials are okay, but it's not enough in my opinion. You want to make sure that you have them. It's a replicated trial where you can find out what the least significant differences or coefficient variation to make sure that what you're reading is actually legitimate, not just a bit of marketing. So this is kind of what gets put out in Canada. This is from our Seed Manitoba. It's a little dated, of course, but you're looking at all the different varieties that are available in Canada that are tested. So we've got CRS is our variety, FX2 is our variety, CFX1 is our variety with Hemp genetics, and then the other ones are Clatonia, Piccolo, and Grandie. So the first three, I call them our C varieties. They're all sort of a little bit taller stature, a little bit more suited for the southern regions in the US just because there's more biomass there. But very high yielders. You can see there's a few that may have been higher yielders in the program, but overall CRS is a good workhorse. And our new varieties that are shorter in stature make harvesting for grain much easier. If you get into a variety that like we had when we first brought varieties in from Eastern Europe, we were dealing with a crop that was 12 to 13 feet tall. And if you can imagine, you put it on a straight cut header and have that header space to go, but there was wrapping on everything. So whether it was in the feeder house or the discharge feeder of a back rotary combine, or even on the drive shafts, and I got some pictures to show you that what can happen. But here are some of the universities and again the research institutes that I'm sort of working with and trying to work with to determine how these varieties are suited. And I know there's a multi-state variety trial going on this year in the U.S., and so we will be participating in that. So if you want to take a look at it helps everybody, I think, protection for the farmer to pick the right variety, and also as a company we know which varieties to promote in certain areas. So this is all kind of just normal, but essentially right now hemp comes in a lot of different heights, and this I don't expect you to sort of, it's more of a broad acre or 30,000 foot visual of this graph that I want you interested in, but you can see on the far left hand side are the taller varieties, and then over to the right, sort of the height difference that you might find in hemp, and really it's by location too, so the bars within each variety depict how tall that variety grew in different locations. So the further north we would go, such as in Bakerville, Alberta, or Roblin, there's quite a difference in heights of expression there, but that's generally due to the latitude of where that variety is grown. So no matter what variety you're growing, it's a photoperiod sensitive variety that depends on that sunlight and the length of day that it can have quite a significant impact on how much biomass and how much height that variety will grow. Hemp again is a warm season type crop. It likes to be seeded into warm soils. It doesn't have a lot of vigor to sit in the soil. We don't have any seed treatments for it right now registered. So you want to seed shallow, anywhere from a half to an inch. I would bump up this seeding rate here probably to a minimum of 25 pounds per acre for grain production again. 25 to 30 pounds is probably a little bit closer to range. The 20 pounds, if you do have herbicide options in your toolbox, that's not too bad, but you want your crop to compete against weeds, and so by utilizing a higher planting density, you can help suppress those weeds better. Also for fiber production, the recommendation is to seed more plants per square foot. At the 25 pounds, you're looking at about 12 plants per square foot. So that's kind of what your goal would be. For higher seed rates for fiber, you're looking for 14 to 16 plants per square foot. And that equates to, or it results in a much more thin stalk that has a higher quality of bast fiber as opposed to the herd. So that's the narrow behind that. So seeding in warm soils, you know, this is a Celsius thermometer there, but about 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit. And if using any sort of air delivery system, make sure that your fan speed only gets the seed into the seed row and not too quickly. Seed coat is very sensitive again and very susceptible to cracking, which can affect your germination. So just another side point. Even when you're moving the grain around, if you're using an auger, make sure the auger is full. Maybe don't run it at the highest RPM, slow it down. Larger diameter augers work better that way, so try to stay away from those pencil augers and stuff like that. So this is just a picture of our seeding unit. They're actually just putting anhydrous, which is our fertilizer, in the back tank. They're just doing my field around the house here right now. But this is the most common unit that we have on the prairies here for seeding, and I'm not sure if you can see, but I'm circling around where the white hoses come on the actual cultivation implement. That manifold there is where you want to check to see if there's any crack. We talked a little bit about seeding rates, the daylight sensitivity. This is just an example. It's kind of a poor picture, but if you can kind of see, you can see this is actually a male plant, and it already has the male pollen bags out and ready to pollinate. The plant itself is only about 6 inches tall. It was seeded very late in May, but as soon as those days start to get shorter, the plant can detect that, and it starts to send out its reproductive parts. So that's just a little bit of a tale of how prior to June 21st, it's generally just puts in biomass. Seeding rate was a very interesting project that we did here a number of years ago, and this kind of depicts how cool soils may have an effect on mortality of our plant population. So again, on the left is our variety CRS1. So we planted date from the beginning of May to the 1st of July. Actually, we wanted to sort of really stretch it out to see the extremes. We don't normally see anything into July, but we did in this case. But when we're planting 250 plants per meter squared, if we planted early in May, only about half of those actually made a mature plant. So mortality was upwards of 50 to 55%. Kind of leveled off sort of in the middle of May, and then we shot up in June when the soil temperature got really good, and actually just about less. In this case, we still factor in a mortality rate in our planting formula, so that's why we see 256 or 290. But essentially, it just shows you that once hemp has the perfect conditions, it pops up the ground. Makes a mature plant quite quickly, but be careful about seeding a little bit too early. So, this is a bit of an fertility uptake that we did. So our core macronutrients, and comparing it to canola, which would probably be just slightly, well, probably less obviously than what corn would be trying to take up, but you can see hemp is a very hungry plant. So where our canola requires about 120, and we can convert kilograms to hectare to pounds per acre quite easy. This is just about a slight percentage difference. But so nitrogen, we're looking at about 200 pounds of nitrogen that the plant will uptake in the growing season. And of that, 40 of that gets carried off with the grain. The rest of it stays sort of the plant material and leaches back in if you work that stubble or that product or the plant biomass back into the soil. Potassium, we're looking at, it utilizes about 50 pounds of P, phosphate. Potassium, this is kind of a bit of a shocker. So those that are concentrating on CBD production and harvesting green material and taking the green material right off the field, you could be taking up to 200 pounds per acre of potassium off the field. If you're only taking the grain, you can see there that there's only about 10 pounds per acre per grain of potassium coming off. But just want to be aware of and make sure your soil tests and see where your levels are and maintain. So, and then of course sulfur is a reasonably part of it too to help. So we do add a little bit of sulfur whenever we're in our diseases. Sclerotinia seems to be one of the most major diseases, I guess, in hemp. In Canada and in Manitoba itself, I really haven't seen a field decimated by it, but after I said that, I presented or had this presentation at the conference in Wisconsin, and a grower came up to me after and said, well, if you've never seen a field decimated by Sclerotinia, here's one. And he showed me pictures where it was absolutely decimated. There was maybe one or two green plants. So if you do have a lot of beans in the rotation that are also a host for Sclerotinia botrytis, it should be noted that could be an issue. On the grain side again, if we're not seeing field completely destroyed, it's these the Sclerotinia bodies that are found in the stalk that cause a problem, because if we can't clean that out of a lot of hemp, seed lot of hemp, then, or if it happens to break in half, and if somebody opens up a bag of hemp parts, it's black, what looks like a turd, and that's exactly what they think it is a mouse excrement or a rat or something. So, not very sightly, and it causes lots of issues. So that's where it sort of has a bit more of an impact is on the processing side. This is what botrytis or white mold looks like. So in hemp, I'm sure a lot of you have probably seen that in your soybeans and stuff in the crop. Insect-wise, we don't have a lot of corn up here yet, but on the left we do have a European corn borer. This picture was taken where there is some corn that's grown in the rotation. So that can have an effect on your crop. The middle picture is a Bertha armyworm, and the right picture, of course, a grasshopper, where we'll find them in the crop along with aphids, but they really don't seem to do any economical damage. They will be eating the leaves, and so perhaps on the CBD side that could be an issue. But generally speaking, for grain, they just consume the biomass and seemed to walk or hop or crawl away fat and happy after the fact. So not a big issue. The only other one I would say that to be concerned about early in the season are cutworms. And I'm not sure what you guys have down there for cutworms, or if that's an issue or not. But that is one that we found up in the prairies here that can cause some issues. Frost tolerance is fairly good in hemp. -4 is probably looking at about a minus or 27 degrees Fahrenheit. This was on May 30th of 2015, and this is the same year that I did my seeding day trial. And you can see that there's some discoloring, some chlorosis, some stress in the plant. But really, we lost very few plants to that frost. Once the heat of the day started coming, it recovered quite nicely. Whereas we had soybeans coming out of the ground, and they were decimated and had to be reseeded, along with flax on the right-hand side. So pretty tolerant to frost, both in the spring and in the fall. Hail damage, this is a field that got a hailstorm sometime in early or second week of July. It did recover. You kind of see from the pictures here where the branches were broken off early on, and as long as there seems to be a living internode, they branched out and seemed to survive. And obviously he didn't get a bumper crop off that field. The farmer did decide to leave it, but he was able to harvest about 60% of what the potential of that field was. So in some ways, you wonder why it's so easily affected by moisture and other things, when in some cases it seems to be extremely hard to kill the plant. So it's one of those things that makes it an amazing plant to work with. Wind can be a problem. Here you can see it during the elongation phase, when hemp doesn't have a lot of fiber in the stalk yet. Happen to get a plow wind or a strong wind, it can just snap like a pencil. Once the fiber is mostly just cellulose in there, once the fiber comes along, it's a little bit better. And this is a very close up, it's a little blurry, but you can kind of see how, particularly the seed in the top here, where the bract material just kind of separates and opens up, and the seed is just left open there. So if you happen to get a very strong wind, if you have a number of these 5 or 6 foot or 10 foot plants waving in the wind, bumping heads against each other, you will have some seed loss with that. So certain areas with high wind, you need cognizant of that also. How are we doing for time right now, Brian? That's pretty good.
You get closer, maybe a couple minutes, and if we have any questions, we'll do maybe 2 minutes of questions.
Okay, I'll just kind of go quickly through some pictures of how wrapping this up, just to scare the crap out of everybody, and then we'll take some questions. So this is my old combine where I did a lot of the work, and I still do a lot of this work for Hemp Genetics. I was able to spawn this combine, so we do a lot of research continually on crop. This is what I'm driving out in large scale, and the first year I had smoke coming out of the back of this one was a little bit more scary when this one smoked all the time. But basically, there was hardly anything there to burn, but much more nervous when the green started to smoke. So this is just some examples of where it starts to wrap. This is the drive shaft of the same model, 9870. There's just a spline there, and as soon as Hemp can have the opportunity to sort of pick up on that, it just wraps like crazy. But a quick fix is some PVC pipe with some duct tape, and you're off to the races, more wrapping. This is in the back of the combine. There's a beater that pushes the material down into the straw chopper and against the wall. Hemp would sort of start to build up in there and start to heat that bearing up a little bit. But we put these rubber flaps on to sort of support the wall at the same time. Trying to keep them all the same size, keep that rotor in balance. And then again, sort of solve that problem. It's always a good idea to maybe manufacture yourself a tool like this so that you can get into those hard to reach places to pull away. Again, you don't want those bearings heating up. And then of course, I've often said this, that when you're green farming in hemp, it's not a matter of if you have a fire at your end. So this is installed in the back of my combine now. You kind of just need that. A lot of times, there's just a lot of smoke and fire, but you can never be too careful with that. And we talk a lot about having and bringing it down to moisture. This is just an example of a moisture meter that we use. This is probably used on 90% of the farms in Canada, but it has the Canadian Grain Commission has the charts for hemp, and it's not that bad of a price. I think the Dickie John also has. So with that, I think I'll just leave it at that. I think Brian, and just ask if there's any questions at this point in time.
All right, do we have any questions for Jeff? Anybody?
Has he tried any flame cultivation? Does it stand up like corn does as far as flame cultivation?
Any flame cultivation? Does it stand up like corn, you know?
I personally have not tried that, but I know you guys have used that in the organic situation, but they're not popular here yet.
Okay.
I'll just quickly, if I got time for Arnold's question, this is kind of a little bit of the DVD that we did, just to give you an idea. So we obviously don't have the manpower to, to be growing sort of smaller acre and hand harvesting. So this is just a close-up of the trichomes that are present. This is the variety Clatonia of ours. So you can see it definitely has trichomes, definitely has CBD, but it's just at lower percentages. It's probably 2 to 3% CBD as opposed to higher or double-digit numbers. But what we did is a little bit different, and turn this down. So this is harvesting much more mature than we normally harvest grain. The risk for fire was extremely high here, but we wanted to sort of capture what was coming out of the back of the combine that we've been burning and throwing away. So this chaff material still tested around 2 to 3% CBD, and this is my brother-in-law driving our old tandem backwards for 78 as an experiment, because we really didn't have the okay to do this until August, and so we weren't prepared. This was the quickest way we could figure that we could come up with trying to figure out a way to see what value the hemp chaff had. And again, so we collected 12 brief trucks of that chaff that are still here that are sold to an LP, which is a licensed processing marijuana company that will extract it for CBD. So I think that's going to be a little bit more. That's kind of it going into the Quonset, and then we would just feel that's what it kind of looked like once we cleaned it up. And then there's full biomass. But anyway, that's just a little bit side note on some of the CBD stuff that we're doing, and we're going to expand on a little bit more out here in the Great White North. So thank you very much for your time, and hopefully I didn't go too far.
Fine, thanks, Jeff. I see the crowd here. We've got a room full of interested farmers here, so appreciate you Skyping in, and good luck on season up north.
Well, obviously got my contact there, Brian, so if anybody's looking for a seed, you can pass that along. But appreciate all your attention, and best of luck to your planting season and harvest this year, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Test, hello. So, you just heard a lot about farming from wonderful agronomists in Canada. I'm going to take a step away from all the farming aspects for a second, and I'll give you the equipment to my brother Andrew. To give you a bit of background about myself before I continue talking real quick, I'm with Bish Enterprises and Hemp Harvest Works. We're a small family business that's been in Nebraska since 1976. I recently graduated from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln with a bachelor's degree in microbiology with a minor in plant biology. My goal is to develop a breeding program for the university so we can develop standard genetics for the many hemp farmers across the nation and here in Nebraska. Many of us are interested in growing for CBD hemp. So what is CBD and what is a cannabinoid? Well, CBD is a cannabinoid, so what are they? They're really just a chemical class of compounds that have a similar chemical structure. I really look for this tail here and a ring. I I won't get too much into the chemistry. I don't want it to feel like a chemistry class. But if there's a tail and a ring, there's a similar structure there that interacts regularly with receptors we have in our body to give known effects. So there's cannabidiol here and tetrahydrocannabinol here. Those are the two biggest cannabinoids we know of. This would be CBD, what most hemp farmers are trying to grow for, and this is THC, what we're trying to eliminate, unless you're consuming cannabis or for marijuana purposes. So when we consume cannabinoids, whether that's through smoking it or consuming it through edibles, topically, these cannabinoids interact with our brain, and there's, not always with the brain, there's a CD1 receptor in the brain, and that delivers the psychotropic effects known from marijuana, where there's another receptor, CD2, in the spleen, and that interacts much more with the immune system, which delivers the many healing benefits from CBD hemp. So when we say the word cannabinoids, where do they come from? Phytocannabinoids are cannabinoids that come from plants. Hemp and cannabis make many cannabinoids. That's what they're known for, but there's other plants that also make cannabinoids. It's not exclusive to hemp. This echinacea is a very common flower that has cannabinoids. And cocoa plants that make chocolate, they also have cannabinoids that interact with our system, much in the same way that the cannabinoids in hemp interact with our system. They're at much lower levels, but they still allow for that interaction. So these molecules have been around forever. We're just now learning about them more in depth. And hemp is a wonderful source to study them because they're present in such high concentrations. Endocannabinoids, on the other hand, are not produced by plants. They're produced by animals and humans ourselves. We actually manufacture these inside our own body, and they deliver much of the same effects. I don't know how many of you are runners, but those that do go running sometimes experience a runner's high, and that is from the endocannabinoids that we produce on our own system. So it's very interesting that these are not new to us. They've been around forever, and we're just now learning how we can exploit them really through hemp. Where on hemp are they? They're trichomes, cannabinoids are found in trichomes, which are plant hairs that are found on the female flowers of plants. They're found throughout the plant, but they're most concentrated on the female flowers. So this is a picture of a female flower, and as we zoom in further and further, we can see that there are these little glands that look like hairs. And as we zoom in on an electron microscope, we can see how really small and delicate they actually are. And it's important to know that this is what you're trying to harvest. Because all of the CBD exists right here, and CBD is where you're going to make your money from. So when it all exists on this very delicate structure on the outside of the plant, you have to treat that very carefully. You can't treat that like your grain, which is going to stay in contact or stay intact through whatever you put it through, really. These trichomes can degrade by physical contact, heat, light, oxygen, time, really anything. They're very weak, so you have to treat them delicately to be able to maximize your harvest, if that's what you're trying to harvest for. There's also synthetic cannabinoids out there. I won't talk about this for too long, but these are not derived from plants or found in humans. There's not a whole lot of this type of production currently in the United States. If it is, it's done for research purposes. However, other countries such as China and Russia do have labs that are designed to create these synthetic cannabinoids to interact with our body in similar ways, but they are not quite the same and they are not leading to the exact same effects. So this is something we need to be aware of as this market continues to grow, that we might see false products out there that say they have cannabinoids, but they might be synthetic and not from hemp. So that's just something to be aware of. So here we can see some of the effects cannabinoids have on our body. They can relieve pain, suppress appetite, suppress muscle spasms, anxiety. So there's many beneficial features that these cannabinoids have in our system. So that, because these cannabinoids are helpful, we want to grow hemp, and so we're here to support, we're trying to support 657 as well, which will allow farmers to grow hemp in Nebraska. I'll actually invite my brother Andrew Bish up here to speak more about 657, and then he will continue on and talk about equipment by Bish Enterprises. Well, thank you. I think Camden spoke on this, and I appreciate that. Yeah, 657, that's obviously the bill that will allow farmers to grow this year, and that's that my brother and I helped introduce the language for that. We're really excited about where we're at with it. I share a different opinion than the back of the room in terms of what the governor's viewpoint is. I do think the governor has been consistently on record telling people that he's for it, while in the background meddling. But regardless of that, we're on track to get it done. So we'll see how the next week or so goes. It's very exciting times here in Nebraska, I can tell you that. I've already got seed. I've got seed being shipped into me right now from Jeff. I've actually got some varieties, some from North Dakota, South Dakota, and we're going to do a little bit of experiment around our place as well. So I'm looking forward to this year. We can change into my presentation. Okay, so I'm Andrew Bish. I'm going to talk about harvesting, a little bit about who I am. Our company, Bish Enterprises, was founded by my grandfather in 1976. You might know us from combine header adapters. If you've seen a red head on a green combine, or vice versa, we probably made that happen. Most recently, I launched a company called Hemp Harvest Works, and this company focuses on the needs of hemp growers in the United States. We got started in 2015 with a Colorado custom harvester that was just simply having wrapping issues. And we took a header out there that we developed for the sorghum industry, and since then we've been developing more and more equipment that's been customized to use in different varieties of hemp. We started off in the grain, fiber, and then we've worked into some CBD machinery as well. So myself, like I said, I've been involved in hemp since 2015. I've been working for the family business since 2012. Prior to 2012, I actually worked in the retail industry, a company, Radio Shack. I worked for Radio Shack for 14 years throughout the country, and managed quite a few different stores and districts. Hemp is a lot like electronics in the way that it's an emerging industry right now. So there's a lot of neat stuff being developed, and each month, each week, there's new products being deployed, and so it's a really exciting time. Down here is a picture of my daughter. This is us in Kentucky, in the back of the combine, harvesting for some grain. She was excited to do that. This is myself bagging hemp. This is what you do not want to do. This is a tough job. I'm doing some sorting of some hemp there. And this is you can't see it back there, but that's hemp hanging in a building three rows high. So, before I talk about where we are with equipment, I'll share with you a little bit about where we've been as a country. There's a lot of things that have already been created. Unfortunately, a lot of them have been lost to history. But here on the left, an international harvester and McCormick Deering binder there. That's how they dealt with the fiber. At the early part of the century, cannabinoids weren't a thing, and nobody knew how those were going to help us. So grain and fiber, specifically fiber, is typically what people were after. Here's some examples of some stockpiles of hemp fiber. They're leaving that out to ret. Hemp is left outdoors usually to break down the outside herd so that you can get to the fiber inside. They call that process retting. It's a Dutch word for running. I've got a video here of some of these machines running. You can see why we haven't developed similar machines as you watch this go through the field. It's always interesting to me to watch this old machinery, and if we put people on there from today, they just die consistently over and over. But back then, they figured it out, and they didn't die so quickly. But obviously, this is really slow and tedious. And to be honest, where we are right now in some situations with hemp is not much further along than this. We're just a little bit safer, usually, than they were. This is obviously, again, something you don't want to do. My grandfather, he took me to corn shucking contests when I was younger, and that was tough. This is a lot tougher. I thought tearing those ears off and throwing them into the wagon was difficult. I'm allergic to hemp, so when I rub up against it, my arms break out, my face breaks out. It's a tough deal. So I've learned if I'm going to be processing it, I wear a Tyvek suit. But most people don't have that issue that I have with being allergic to the hemp. So now looking at where we're going, I've got some neat machines. I can show you what we're doing here in the United States, what we're doing in Europe, and then some of the machines that we've got available right now as well. This is some fiber harvesting. This is a disc vine. They're just cutting down the crop here. This is in Minnesota. This particular crop, they are actually, they're not using it for fiber, they're actually using the green material, and they're chopping it all up and then doing an extraction of CBD after the fact. This is a way that it can be done. This is typically, doing it this way is going to have a high degree of loss of the CBD product. But as you go into fiber, fiber can be cut with a straight sickle bar. Again, depending on your acreage, if you're growing 400 acres of hemp, that's going to be quite the ordeal. Using a swather might be a little bit more intelligent. And in Nebraska, we do have the possibility of doing a double crop of fiber if you don't let it get to seed, so you can mow that crop down and let it go, and then come back and hit it again. The thing about using swathers and traditional draper headers, things like that, you do need to be with a shorter crop as you start to get taller, and then you start to get the wrapping issues, and then the draper ends up directly in the way. We built an adaptation to match something that they've done over in Europe using a cloth Jaguar and turning that into a swathing unit. This is an example of what they're doing over there. They're actually swathing into a windrow underneath the Jaguar, and they'll let that wet out there, and then they'll take that same machine back through and pick it up and then blow it into a wagon. So then they can dual purpose the machine. Otherwise, it's a $750,000 swather that we made there, which isn't cost effective. But if you do dual purpose it, then it does make some sense. We ran one of these machines out in eastern Colorado this last year. This is an example of some decortication equipment for fiber, and I'm going to show you a little bit of video of how this works. But decortication is the separation of the fiber from the herb, and you end up with two different products there. There's more than just the fiber that you might want to do something with. You can make plastics out of the herb, animal bedding, things like that. So you put it through, let's see if this is going to work. This is a video from a company out in Colorado called Power Zone. They've actually changed their name to Formation Ag. We sell some of their equipment, and we partner with them to help build some equipment, actually. But this will give you an idea of how this works, hopefully, yeah. So when you put the fiber in here, you've got two rollers that are going to have matched speeds, and ultimately it's simply just crushing the outside of the stalk. The bast fiber will come out the one side, and then the woody material is going to come out the other side of this particular machine. This is a smaller machine that a person might do. This type of machine is going to cost about $100,000. Some of the larger machines will end up in $2.5 million. But you're just looking at, we'd have to look at what your your throughput needs to be, how much material you have, and then you can help decide what size of machine that you would need for decortication. Now, once you've got it decorticated, what do you do with it? Well, we're still working on that. The marketplace is still developing itself. But there are buyers for this product. There's actually the highest grade fiber that's produced in the United States right now is produced in Nebraska and has been produced in Nebraska since Bass Pro began in Plattsmouth. So they buy organic fiber actually, and they sell to companies like Patagonia, and they're working with the hemp, the stock to make polymers that they can make plastics out of. So some really neat stuff is happening here in Nebraska with hemp. As far as grain harvesting equipment, there's a header here over on the left side that we've developed called our super crop header, and then a traditional platform on the right side. Here's a video of us harvesting some of the hemp in Goshen, Kentucky. This is a Chinese variety. This is not an ideal variety that you want to grow. It's short. I know Jeff talked about growing short varieties, and short's not the problem. Short and seeds throughout the stalk is the issue. Because the seeds are throughout the stalk, we then have to cut lower if we're going to have a higher yield. The lower you cut, the more stalk material you bring in, the more stock material you bring in, the more wrapping you have, and that's where fires start to happen. We actually did light this combine on fire once while we were going, and I think we were only 10 minutes in when we did that, and then we made some changes and then got through the rest of it. We just got the drone in the air when we caught fire and then had to cancel that. But we should have put that footage in here in a second. My daughter was in the combine when it caught fire, so when they talk about having fire suppression, it's a real thing. You definitely need it. And the thing about the combine fires, a lot of them start on the back end of the combine when you don't see it. So making sure that you've got good visibility back there. Usually, you start to see smoke with hemp. You don't have a fire immediately. It's not sunflowers. You're typically seeing the smoke long before the fire begins. So if you can get to that, you can get that stopped. You can usually clean it up and not have an issue. But if you don't notice it, then maybe you get a spark or the heat continues to build, and you will have some issues. On the flower production side, we've got some machines for this. Flower production is a lot more delicate, and right now, that's currently where most of the dollars being made in the hemp industry are at, from the CBD. We will see that change. The grain, as we continue to produce more grain, we're going to see more adoption with the grain. It's tremendously high in protein. And then on the fiber side, plastics. In Europe, they're making car parts out of those. We saw a real fancy car up there. But there's much more normal cars in the United States right now. The BMW i3, for instance, the dash and the inside door panels are all made of hemp. And Mercedes has adopted a lot of hemp door panels, the interior panels, and they'll continue to expand that. There's when you're dealing with flower production, and I've got some videos of this equipment, you typically have a different type of planting system that people are using right now. People are typically transplanting the hemp into the ground versus planting the hemp into the ground. And the reason for that, here's a transplanter in action. The seeds right now are pretty expensive. These clones that you're seeing here typically are going to go for $5 a clone. If you're looking for seed, sometimes you can get your seed for $1 a seed. So that gets to be pretty expensive. The people that are buying the seed tend to then grow in a greenhouse situation to make sure that they get it out of the ground, and then they go into transplanting. There's some equipment that's being developed. We've actually partnered with a company in Australia that does now make a planter that can lay plastic while it's planting and provide 11 to 13 degree ground temperature difference to help allow hemp to be direct seeded. It's kind of a neat system. But this is a lot of work. So if you're going to go into CBD production, does anybody garden in here? It's a big garden. It's a big garden. And it takes a lot of effort. The plants need a lot of love in ways that the corn just doesn't. Here's an example of a harvest. This is the first machine that we produced for harvesting whole plants. This machine cuts it at the base, grabs the stalk, and then brings it around to the side. Typically, they're going to put that in some sort of cart. We can do 3/4 to 1 acre an hour, so there's limitations to this machine. Depending on what your acreage looks like, you need to consider if this is going to work. Although I can tell you, with CBD, typically less is more. If you grow less CBD and handle it more carefully, you will make a lot more money than growing a lot of CBD and not handling it appropriately. This is how, okay, so once you harvest that whole plant, you've got a problem. You've got to get that plant dried. You've got 2 hours to do this. You don't have 2 hours to get it dry. You have 2 hours to start the drying process. It's a flower, so it's going to start rotting pretty quickly. Typically, people will hang dry that upside down. There are some drying technologies being developed to help speed up the drying. You got to keep in mind, if you're going to grow 40 acres of CBD hemp, you have 40 acres of upside down drying capability. So consider that as you're going about this, because once that's dried, then you need to strip it. You can wet strip it. This is a machine that we've developed to do wet or dry stripping, but it is a hand-operated machine. You have to strip the stem from the stalk, and then you feed the stems through this machine. This will do about 1,200 pounds a day between a couple of qualified operators and being prepared for it. But it's a lot of work. If you look at how much pounds per acre you're going to get from most CBD, you're in the vicinity of 1,500 to 2,500 pounds of plant material. So you would be able to process a half of an acre a day to up to an acre a day with a machine like this. This is an example of a machine that we sell, developed by a company in Colorado called the Clean Cut Harvester. And this is harvesting plants, typically a little bit higher than ground level. We see this machine most often used in harvesting plants that people are drilling for CBD production. So if you're drilling for CBD production, you're going to use lower CBD concentrated plants because the cost of the seed is considerably cheaper. Obviously, 7.5-inch rows with 2 inches apart at $1 seed is not cost effective. So there are some ways to harvest some lower CBD and still end up in a profitable situation. And this header allows for that. This is an example of a machine used over in Europe called the multi-combine. And a lot of us, well not me, but some of you out there have sprayers that look very similar to this. And they can be outfitted with this type of equipment if that's what you would want to do. We're again, as the marketplace is developing, you got to look at where you're going to sell it before we figure out what kind of machines to use. But here's a system that we developed to deal with the whole plant system, rather than having to feed a plant in, cut the branches, separate those from the flower. Well, we developed a system called the Bish one-step system, where we take a whole plant, feed it into the machine. The stalks come out one place, the flower comes out another place, the seed comes out another place. CBD typically is, you grow CBD plants with the expectation of trying to have just females. But you have plants that are going to morph into males. That's kind of how hemp is. If it doesn't have any males around, a female will turn into a male. And so you're going to have some seed out there. And we can separate that out because when you go into extraction to make CBD oil, any type of stalk or seed that you can separate helps the extraction process be more efficient, and that drives up your profitability. So this is just kind of a video highlighting what's happening. It's not really showing all the insides. But that machine will be available on the market this year for harvest season. As far as multi-crop, this is where hemp will eventually go, and harvesting for the grain, fiber, and then moving into collecting cannabinoids as a byproduct. In Europe, typically, they're collecting a lot of the flower material and using that for animal feed. They've been approved for that over there. There's animal feed studies going on in the United States right now, currently capturing cats and dogs are being tested. Once that's approved, then we can expand on to, I think, cattle or horses might be next. We've got, when you look at this machine here, we've actually developed a piece of equipment that will lift the header into the air 9 feet, so we can go into the air and cut some of these higher variety crops. That's one of the challenges the Canadians ran into. They just didn't have the equipment to go along with the higher varieties that were growing over in Europe. But now we do have some technology here in the United States that we can use for that. So that's some of the videos. Here's all of the products that we're currently carrying this year. We do carry transplanters. If you're in the market for a transplanter, we've got transplanters from a company called Magli from Italy. And then we also have an American option, Hemp transplanter company. This is another product from Italy, from a company called Verneri, and this product was typically used to clean up around grapevines, but if you've got wide expanses between your rows, this can help take care of some weed control. Some people that are growing hemp for CBD production versus grain production have rows as wide as 10 feet, depending on what their situation is and their ground conditions and their no-till. This is an example of the harvester that I showed you. It's now yellow. It's a lot easier to see going through the field. This is our super crop header. That works well in hemp for grain production or fiber production. And again, I wouldn't be harvesting much for CBD for that type of product. This is that forage harvester that we put together. We've got the Boss system. We use Schumacher sickles on most of our cutting equipment, although that single row harvester, it actually uses a saw blade because we can cut up to a 8-inch stock with it. There's the Bud Easy that I showed you. We have we carry another machine out of Canada called a twister. This is what people use for smokable flower. It's more predominant in the marijuana industry, but in places like Tennessee and New York, they've been growing CBD and selling it as flour for people to smoke. You can't get high, but it is easier to get CBD into your body. I'm not going to tell anybody to start smoking CBD, but if you want cannabinoids quickly, it's the easiest way to get it, and it bypasses the liver. But there are obviously problems with smoking in general. This is a machine that we sell for shredding. If a person wants to shred the material, we've got a solution for that. This is an example of that corrugator I showed you already. We sell a service called Farmer's Edge. Satellite monitoring is a great idea if you're working with hemp plants. It's a way to get visuals on that crop every day. Farmer's Edge typically can deliver 3 to 5 images of your field every week to you, and it's really inexpensive. You're going to pay $1 to $2 an acre for good imagery service. We've got these bags to store it in. Hemp doesn't store it properly. The grain can be stored in typical bins. It's got to be cooled, but the flour, there's a special bag that we sell that will maintain the cannabinoid content better than just a regular seed bag. And then these are all of the different brands that we carry. So if you need equipment, you want to know what you need to be looking for, a lot of the equipment people have, we try to work with and figure out how they can make that work. And then of course, we do offer custom equipment or machines that are going to solve the needs when the gaps that you might have in your operation. So feel free to reach out to us anytime. I've got my business card here, my number's on brochures that people have picked up. And you can go to our websites, bishenterprise.com or hempharvestworks.com. I think that's it. Oh, and we do offer financing for hemp equipment. So hemp equipment can be financed, and in Nebraska, Pinnacle Bank will finance hemp equipment. So it's not a big issue to get equipment financed here in Nebraska. Thank you all.
Skype in with Will Tarlington. He is from Tennessee. Tennessee Grown is his company. He's one of the farmers we've been networking with over the last few years. We're going to go ahead and get him Skyped in here. He will tell you a little bit about his company. Okay, hear us.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
All right, great. Can you hear me all right from here?
Yep.
All right, great. Am I live? Ready to go?
Yeah, you're good to go.
Okay, everyone, my name is Will Tarleton, Tennessee grown. I've been involved in the industrial hemp program here since 2014, 2015. It was our first real year to have an active program. We mostly started out those years with growing hemp for fiber and training. And then some of our policy and legislation work was, prohibitive of us, really scaling up and getting it right. But we've made a lot of good progress since then, being really active in our advising our Tennessee Department of Agriculture, as well as doing lobbying and legislative work and active, citizen advocacy, and lobbying. So I have a small presentation that I can just kind of start and begin here, and then after that I can answer questions that you may have. And then I apologize if I have not been able to listen in on much of what's been discussed already. So if anything that I'm talking about is redundant, I apologize. But I'll go with what we're doing here. Can y'all see that up on the screen? Or? Can y'all see my display?
Yeah.
Lost audio. Testing.
You're good.
Hello?
I don't think you can hear you. Okay. Okay, you're good to go, Will. You're good to go.
Okay, sorry. All right, try this one more time. Okay, can you see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so yeah, here's my company here, Tennessee Grown, and I'll just start here. So this is just a brief overview of sort of how things have worked here so far in Tennessee. Obviously, started with the 2014 Farm Bill and doing a lot of advising to the Department of Agriculture, really helping them on rules and regulations. One thing that really helped us in our state that some of these other states may have issues with is, at least for the Southeast, not a lot of our states have other cannabis laws or legislation in place. So it really opened us up to be able to navigate rules and regulations a little more effectively without having to backtrack or be put in a sort of a pigeonhole situation as we really try to create our own lane as far as where all the other products you can do with cannabis, and if you want about 0.3% THC, then that's another lane and another issue. So we really try to establish our own industry here, aside from any other medical rec program. I know Nebraska's in sort of a similar situation. So really started off with seeing what Colorado, Oregon, some of these other states were doing in those early years of the Farm Bill, and seeing what things they were coming up against and how some of their policies and rules, you know, they were quick to regulate and kind of got themselves in a situation where it may had taken a little bit longer to keep up with the, you know, with the industry and not get pigeonholed. So that was an important part of our Tennessee Hemp Industries Association. So I'm a board member of TNHIA, or Tennessee Hemp Industries Association is a nonprofit trade association, and we're the state chapter to the national chapter of the Hemp Industries Association. So our state began the first state chapter of the national nonprofit association. And Colleen Cady, who is now the president of that national chapter, was the one who started our state chapter those first years, and is a great resource and has been for us. So, you know, really getting involved on the lobbying level, advising the Department of Ag, and then, you know, we really wanted to see the focus of fiber, food, fuel, animal feed, and then now in the last year, really we've been able to do more extracting, processing, have state statutes, laws that actually support our own Department of Agriculture's program. So at this point, we've sort of moved out of the research stage into a more generally accepted industry for the state. And what's been really nice for us here in Tennessee is that a lot of our agricultural department, you know, we're really looking at it. We've been able to really keep it under the house of the Department of Agriculture and treat it as a food crop. And so with that, you know, at least our Department of Ag is set in a way where, you know, for instance, we are the Food Safety Modernization Act of 2012, our food compliance regulatory body compliant with that. Our industrial hemp program has already been accepted as equal to or better than the federal level. And we have a means from which farmers can grow crops and get it treated as a food and sold as a food to the general public, all the way from seed to sale, essentially, just treating it like a vegetable. And so we also last year were able to pass an animal feed bill, which I think really the state to do that so far. But that basically defined it as we could sell hemp seed or hemp-based animal food, but it could not be combined with anything else, and it had to be labeled as industrial hemp and as a not an additive, but they had another term for it, but it was explicit on, you know, labeling it as industrial hemp, which we were okay with because that's, you know, marketing. And that was something that people are interested in. So we've had a lot of good help on our ag side here, and also here at least we have a pretty well recognized cottage scale agricultural industry, and so there's a lot, you know, we have a lot of statutes and language in our state that sort of assess regulations based on maybe volume or scale, and so they are sensitive to allowing, you know, some of the smaller to medium-sized farm producers to, you know, be able to participate in these type of programs. So yeah, and at the bottom there you just see we have a processor, and my wife has a company now getting into extracts. We have brands that we sort of support as well with that. So yeah, just getting started in production. Some of the things that we really try to be aware of before even planting is obviously, you know, starting with seeds, genetics, where are we getting it from, what are the questions we need to be asking our sources. Obviously starting with certificate of analysis, that's a COA, and then, you know, what are their practices, you know, where did they source their seed, does it have any pest issues if you're starting to cleanse your seed, have they been cleaned, you know, what is the environment that those crops have been bred in? Have they been bred specifically for your environment? One of our biggest things our first year was that we were limited to varieties, internationally certified varieties that weren't necessarily grown for our region. So they were varieties from Canada and Europe that hadn't necessarily been grown down here. So, Finola, I think, is a variety from and grows in Canada, and would probably be something that would work well for you up in Nebraska, or somewhere more north, where you have these longer day growing seasons, but shorter seasons. Whereas here we just have longest, and the most sun we get is about 14 hours at solstice. So that really depends on your region, your geography, of what you need to be aware of in growing what variety. On the second to that is also, what are you growing for? What scale, and are you growing for a cannabinoid market? Are you growing for fiber? Are you growing for green textiles? So some of the questions you need to ask, how have these seeds been verified or have been verified? Just make sure that you have, you feel comfortable asking those questions to providers. Soil preparation, irrigation, these are all typical stuff that most of the people there probably are familiar with and have a good understanding of on large scale agriculture. But, this is a crop, at least, if you're growing it for the CBD market, you're going to be treating it with a lot more labor, hand labor, just like tobacco is what would be most resemblant for us here in Tennessee. But if you're growing big harvesters, large acreage, mechanical, are we going to be, who's the buyer? What do they want? What's the disposition that they want the crop to be in when they come to purchase it or you drop it off to be bought? So, and then what is, this is probably a small question for processors, sourcing their material, but is it going to ethanol, is it going to CO2, water? There's a lot of different methods of processing that are changing, but those are probably the biggest ones for right now. And then for us here, we have a lot of pests in the south, so really having a good integrated pest management calendar, and be thinking of what are the crops going to plant to help stimulate the other beneficial insects that may help sort of contain any outbreak of pest infestations. For us here, for instance, we'll do buckwheat, which attracts parasitic wasp, which attacks caterpillars, which the caterpillars are pretty prevalent here and can cause some significant damage to our crops by getting into the flower of the plant and eating away at their frass. It then becomes mold and can create fungal or bacteria issues that can spread pretty quickly. So having a good idea of what other plants and rotations to control pest issues is something to consider. And then the cost of scale and appropriate technology. I know Bish is there. Hope you're doing well. He's got some great stuff. I've known him for a long time and their family, and they're solid people with some great technologies. Staying ahead. And then just slide over here to the next one. So yeah, then the other thing is outside of the farm, what does your greater industry look like? And what is the scalability and capital investment needed? And if you're in a rural area, what other development opportunities may there be? And of course, just your own farmer communities. There's depending on what the final product is and what infrastructure may already exist, trying to utilize as much of that as possible. More so just really as taking this as a food, at least for us, as a food product or an existing agricultural crop. How do we kind of mainstream this crop and utilize what we may already have available to us? And then utilizing those resources from the state or the USDA or whoever may be your closest consultants or ag support in your area. Developing those relationships further has been important for us. So I imagine I'm talking to most people who understand this in the room. What is your production method? What do you need to get there? Soil prep, fertility amendments, proximity to resources, a little bit more of what we're talking to. It may not be as much an issue now, but there may be some value in conventional to organic or certified organic or regenerative or biodynamic. Any of these value systems may still correlate to the source. For instance, here we're going to be once again treating it like a food, but also going through the regular GAP certifications and accessibility to markets is important, and even the international market is going to be a good one for us here in the States. And as long as we're treating it along those same lines of being able to market it, sell it domestically, internationally by maintaining those food safety requirements, is something to prepare for. And then, obviously, these are all for Tennessee, but, I think the same can be for, I know Tom has been active at the General Assembly up in Nebraska, and a handful of you in the room have. So we can kind of translate it to the same, resources that may apply to Nebraska here. So, like, Tennessee has a very good online General Assembly website that's very active, and if you don't have one for your state or haven't seen one of these before, I would just recommend sort of seeing what Tennessee does as far as an online database to follow bills. It's very conducive to citizen lobbyists and citizen activists, who are wanting to follow their policy and statutes. Hemp Industries Association, that's the national association, been very helpful on the federal level. Obviously, any USDA and FDA have continuous guidelines, kind of ever evolving, and I know there's been a couple of new things coming out from them regarding hemp and how they're going to regulate it in the future. There's our website that's on there. Thinking ahead, genetics, very important, breeding, really finding the varieties that work best for your region and your area and are productive. Here, having the ability to do the research, whether it's through the university or just your own. Like I said, Tennessee is bound to a research institute, but they play a very important role in this as well. And now that some of the stigma's been lifted, I think a lot more are willing to participate. I know you have the professor there that has been talking and actually has been active substantially in trying out genetics and things for Nebraska. So, state university support and that kind of thing is important. So here is, I just want to talk about pest growth, because this is one of the most prevalent ones. I don't know if it's, the screen is able to zoom in here, but you can see some, these are russet mites, broad mites here, and this is something that you have to have a scope for. You have to look at these about 100x under a microscope and to even see if you have them. So these things can devastate your crop. They are microscopic insect pests that will suck out the life of your crop. And just by looking at a plant, you may not be able to tell that they're there, but they are active, and these are actually pests that were a few states out west, and the Department of Transportation were releasing these mites to combat weed suppression, or create weed suppression. And so, they traveled along and they were distributed along highways that had active cannabis industries, and from there they kind of spread into the cultivators production. So it can be very devastating pest. There's another close-up right there. Just some field preparation, cover crop usage. I'm a big believer in that, and this year we will actually trial out doing a auto flower variety and a no-till situation, just doing 1 acre. We have a stand of clover, vetch, and mustards, and rye. And so we'll do a no-till roll-down planting with that. So some more just maintenance harvest. Over here at the top right, that's a variety called Late Sioux. So you can see this is a flower for biomass for CBD production. But these are planted on 6 foot by 6 foot rows from center. And you can see that you can get quite a bit of biomass just from some of these flower varieties for that. And that's about, I think those are 600 foot or more rows. And then this is just an example for everyone to get used to asking for these type of things. This is a COA, so Certificate of Analysis. So this is something that would give you your THC, your CBD, your CBG percentages. You can see that here in Tennessee, we only care about legally. We don't. The only thing that's tested is the Delta 9 THC. So that was another piece of good legislation that we've been able to utilize I feel like, to protect the farmer more for when they get tested, their crop tested, that they're only really testing the psychoactive, that one molecule, Delta 9 THC. So as you can see, this is compliant, and of the ratio here at the bottom of CBD to 21.8 to 1. So these are things to look at and ask for. There's also if you're going into the CBD market, for instance, and you're dealing with processors who are going to be paying you on the percentage of CBD material. If you have your own COA or your own sample that's just your flower tops, that shows you may have 14% CBD in it. But when that processor for extraction of the cannabinoids, homogenizes that material, it'll actually be more like a 10 or 12 or maybe even lower percentage. So, knowing how to take samples and having a standardization of samples and what that looks like, growers, farmers need to understand what they're getting paid on and what that needs to look like to get paid on. And then, so here's my contact here. And let's see, that's it. That's the end of my slideshow.
Any questions?
I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions for Will? I think no one has any questions. All right. Thank you, Will.
Yes, you're very welcome, and thanks for letting me participate in this. And obviously, if anyone does have, there's probably a lot of information going on today. easy to get sidetracked into all the multifacets of this industry. But it's helped to just, you know, focus on what you're good at and hopefully, you know, be involved in your community and relationships and building those up and utilizing what already exists has really helped us, has been beneficial for us here. So I'm happy to take any questions or emails if anyone has anything to follow up with.
All right, thank you, Will.
Right.
Okay. We are gonna go straight to John Lupian. He is an owner of Bass Corp. They're located in actually Cass County, Nebraska. He is one of the, I guess, the state's only fiber processor. So I know a lot of you are gonna learn how to grow this crop. The next question, the most important question you'll probably have is, where can I sell my crop? And John is one on the fiber side. Here you go.
Hi everyone, I'm John Lupian of Bass Corp. We have a facility that's been operating now for 3 years in Plattsmouth, Nebraska. We've been in operation for 5 years. We've done all our work in that area around Plattsmouth. What we do is we've developed a decortication system. We call it a system because it's not one machine, it's several machines, and it requires additional work beyond just the decortication to get to a finished product. So, in a nutshell, we take a bale of hemp, we run it through our machine, we get 2 products out the back end, and they have varying degrees of cross-contamination. Those 2 products are bass fiber and chipped up wood. I call it wood, some people call it herd, but it's the material on the inner part of the stalk. And these stalks, we're talking about the singular stalks. These are grown primarily from what we call dual-purpose hemp, which is grown primarily from grain, and it's also from fiber hemp. And the difference between the two is that the dual-purpose goes all the way to seed, and it's grown at about 30 to 35 pounds per acre seeding rate. The fiber is grown at 40 to 60 pounds an acre, depending on the variety, and it's harvested early when the male starts to flower. The reason for that is if it goes further, there's differentiation between the sexes, and then you get uniformity issues in the crop. So we harvest it when the males flower, roughly about 90 days. You get high biomass, and you get a very uniform stock material, which translates into a higher quality fiber. For our purposes, that would be textiles. So where we're at in the development right now is we're scaling from what I would call prototype and pilot scale production. And we're going into a build right now to build the first replicable turnkey system. That would be about 2 tons per hour. And once we have that done, we're going to be able to replicate these systems and set them up across the country. Go to that. Hit it. Push the button. This one. Hello. No. Hello. All right. All right. Well. So, at any rate, where we're at right now is we're scaling this production. So my production rate right now is right around half a ton per hour, which is roughly about a bale. So a large square bale is somewhere between 800 to 1,200 pounds, typically, depending on the compression. I can do about 1 of those per hour. Requires me breaking them by hand and feeding them by hand. What we use for cleaning is a large incline cleaner. We purchased it out of a cotton gin, so it's a used piece of equipment. So we've had to kind of scrap and figure this stuff out on our own and innovate around it. And it's been a long, arduous process, and it's required a good amount of capital. And comparatively, though, if we were to compare like let's call it, say, a 2 ton per hour system out of Europe, that system would run roughly $15 million. What you'd be getting is a low-grade composite fiber out the back end and a chipped-up wood material. That's roughly about $15 million. Over 4 years, we've raised at the 4-year mark, we had raised $1 million, and we had production capacity at about half ton per hour. We were able to, with a partner, do the wet process and get into textile grade fiber. So when I say wet process, that fiber that comes off the stalk initially, it's not ready for much of anything.